Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Re-engaging, Re-onboarding, Reconnecting, all the re's today. Where, well, I can see there's still a few people just joining, really fast and furious. But we're going to sort of start slowly anyway, as we allow for a few more people to log on. And somebody just dropped off, so I think they were on the wrong webinar, guys. Or they were scared by us. But do you know what? Actually, we were just talking about it. It's really, really good to laugh right now. I feel, there's a lot of, we've been through the unknown, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We kind of know what's going to happen. And so, I think it's really timely, as all the conversation now is really around how we're opening up the economy again. We've got to, open it up, get Australia back to work, but getting Australia back into this new world of work. What does that look like? And so today we are really going to be talking about what we and you as leaders need to do now to really set up your teams of success, and then what you need to do next. So at some point you're going to see our magic ball where we're going to give you all the answers, but maybe not answers, but certainly guidelines, because we have two wonderful, wonderful people with us, two of my favourite people, Rhonda Brighton-Hall and Nikki Hobin. This is a webinar where you're allowed to laugh. If you're laughing to yourself and have a question, also please post your question in the question section of that box, and we will have time at the end of this. So it's half an hour of sort of listen to us talk, and I think hopefully positively for a change, and then 15 minutes for Q&A. So I'm Elle Green, Marketing Director at FlexCareers. I have nothing much to say today, just to listen to the wonderful Rhonda and Nikki, and I'm going to pass over to you guys now to introduce yourselves.
Hello, and thank you for that welcome, Nikki and Elle. It's great to see both your faces, as always. And I think I'm really pleased to hear that we're going to laugh on this webinar. That's a huge relief for me. It is a great topic. As people probably know, if they know me, I'm the CEO and founder of mwah, and it's delightful to be here to support CareerSwitch, because I think it's such a neat idea to do things differently, and this sort of conversation about really looking at this and what could it be is a perfect example of that voice, and a voice that's really been needed for all of us at the moment when everything is so ambiguous. Nikki.
Thank you, Rhonda. And yes, for those of you who know me, I'm Nikki Hobin, founder and CEO of Flourish Consultancy. And I have to say, what a great reason for me to work with two awesome people and a strategic partner of ours with CareerSwitch and mwah to share with you this very valuable topic that I actually know a lot of people are talking about and questioning and discussing at the moment. So good that we could create this opportunity to have a chat. Not that like Rhonda and I now like to have a chat at all.
Yeah. I think all three of us like a chat, so that should be fun.
Yes, brilliant. On that note, shall we go to the agenda? This year and this period has really been absolutely unprecedented, and it is the word of 2020, unprecedented. And I sometimes look at the synonyms to see if I can change it, but I think unprecedented is agreed, literally from every dimension. There are a lot of words being thrown around right now, which is why we use them: re-onboarding, re-engagement, reintegration. But what do they all really mean? So really, we're looking at discussing today sort of the current context. What's next being right now? What do you have to do now? What are expectations? What are leadership expectations? What are your people going to be looking at you to help them do? Because let's face it, people are a little lost right now. And then what next? The future. As we start reintegrating, re-engaging, what's that next step? So Rhonda, if you could sort of start with that current context and tell us a little bit about where we're up to now, that would be amazing, please.
Thank you. And so this is sort of the way, this visual that I like is because it's all the way that we're currently getting it fed to us every day. But I'm probably like everybody else on the planet is, when I sit down in front of a TV and it says the word COVID, I'm like, bye. to go. But there is a lot of news about it. And we spent a few months following the graphs and everything else, and now we're much more engaged in the human stories, which I think is great. I would say that it has been a massive change, absolutely at speed. You know, we used to say, should we work from home or not? Is there a policy or program permission form? And then one day we said, everybody pick up their stuff and work from home tomorrow. So overnight, we changed the way that we work. And of course, for some people, more fundamentally, we removed about 13% plus of the jobs in the Australian economy. And we work with a lot of restaurants and hospitality. They're literally shut down, like they just paused, go, travel, etc. So very, very tough patches of the economy. But for the other 85 or so % of us, we literally went and worked from home, but not in a flexible, I can do whatever I like way, but in the only place you can work is from the dining room, and good luck with homeschooling while you're there. So there was a real sort of change. And we're just starting to understand the mental health and the impact of that, especially for those who are quite extroverted. Like, what does it mean when we can't give our colleagues, you know, hi, it's great to see you, let's go and grab a coffee, or just that physical face-to-face contact. And the differences between industries, where some industries have gone gangbusters, like, you know, Woolworths and Coles, because we all went mad and went shopping in a crazy way because we decided that we were sourdough bread experts. So they went absolutely off the wall when other industries disappeared. So we're looking at the pain, we're feeling that for our colleagues and friends and people that in our families that we know are hitting an unemployment line for the first time in their life. But we had all of that change. And then on top of that, we had this extreme intimacy, someone that we'd only ever seen in a suit and a desk, and even in an activity-based working, we were still in a room acting like clerical or admin or professional people. And all of a sudden we're looking into their bedroom and seeing their kid and meeting the dog, and an intimacy in our relationship that we had never expected. And 2 days ago we didn't see it, and all of a sudden it was with us. So massive change, structural change, economic change, and amongst all of that, a degree of optimism. And my favorite quote, we were just talking about a little while ago, is from Sam Mostyn, when she said, for all the economic discussion, and we got economy versus health versus humanity, etc., she said, basically, we don't live in an economy, we live in a society. And the economy is just us working together. So if we can think like that, we have to think how we come back together. And that's obviously what we're going to talk about today. Nikki, did you want to add to that? I know you've got lots of thoughts on this stuff as well.
Yeah, and it was really nice having the conversation actually earlier as well. And you're right, but it's not lost on any of us, I don't think, that interestingly, when you look at the change curve follows the grief curve. And of course, we're also going through this through COVID-19. I kind of like the correlation with that. If you think about it, we all went through this kind of period of bewilderment and disbelief at the beginning of this. Like, is this really happening? Knowing that literally none of us have lived through a pandemic. You know, we're fortunate that we haven't had this for 100 years. So there's bewilderment and disbelief. Is this really happening? And then obviously, exactly as you said, Rhonda, like dealing with the sort of disruption of living life a different way. And then now kind of moving into this exploration phase, and ultimately we'll move out of that to what we're talking about today, is rebuilding. And but what we've got to, I think, recognize is, just like those of us going through change and dealing with grief, is that we're all going to go through this at a different pace. And actually, Rhonda, picking up on something you said earlier, you're right. We literally up sticks, moved out of an environment and to something different. And so if you think about it, we were working one way pre-COVID-19, and now we're working another way, a different way, another way during COVID-19. And then when we come back into the workplace, I suspect it's actually not going to be how it was before. It's going to be a combination of those two things bringing together. And actually, a topic we were just chatting about before we came online is, again, picking up on what Rhonda said about this intimacy of the environment that we're all working from. As leaders, and thinking about this at the moment, really important point is to be respectful and acknowledge, and also in your own self-management of this, be aware that we're not working from home. The emphasis on we're working from home, right? So as employers, we should be very respectful of the fact that we're being invited into people's homes and managing all that brings with it. but also I do think there's going to be a lot of upside of that intimacy that you alluded to, Rhonda, and getting to know each other better. Because at the end of the day, and you know, you and I share a very strong value around this and around humanizing work and people being the most important resource in work environment. So if this means through this one way of working at the moment, we're all getting to know each other better and what makes us tick and how we live and what our values are, then that can only be one upside.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you for those thoughts, those guys. Really insightful, and it makes me think. I mean, we've talked a lot about it. You're right, Nikki, and I've talked about it about this whole period. It's like this collective grief we're going through at a global level.
Yeah.
And the thing about grief is that it's intense and it's palpable. So just imagine that at a global level. So it's not just one of us or people sympathizing or empathizing with you. This is a mass collective. So, you know, the energy has not been positive. And I think what people forget is like, oh, we've got to be on, we're better, you know, I'm doing better than the next person. Everything's relative, but it's constant. So I think what we'd like to do, guys, we're going to do a bit of a poll. We'd love to really understand, as we think about how we can help them going forward, how you as leaders are feeling right now. So we're going to run a poll. Love you to answer that if you can. We're going to take a couple of minutes to do that.
We need some sort of I'm filling in a poll music.
Yeah, I know.
We can sing. There's a really good mindset tool is to put the word yet on the end of this conversation, like I haven't learned to sing in tune yet, as opposed to saying I can't sing.
At some point I will have to accept that I can't sing in tune, but yet is good for now.
Or we could say, because there's no such word as can't, we could reframe it and say I just need more practice at singing in tune. And that's our background poll. That's our background poll alternative, everybody.
It is a bit like that.
Okay. Oh, we're back. There we are.
So what
Now, I can't see the poll. I'm wondering if we're having a tech issue, guys.
No, the poll. Oh, you can't see the answers to the poll.
No,
I can't.
Oh, so good, maybe
good.
There we are. Oh, okay.
Oh, pretty even.
Which is interestingly indicative and goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that we're all, you know, there's not a one size fits all on this.
Yeah, slightly ahead on that unsure of expectations. I think that's that massive ambiguity we're all dealing with. Isn't that just so clear? And the other one, that green one, people no longer wanting to come back to the office. We'll talk about this in just a second, but we've got a really close friend of ours who's part of a very big company. They've already got 2 petitions from employees saying, look, you know how we were unsure I could do my job flexibly? Well, now it's proven I'll see you around sometimes. So they're not coming back. And that's almost like a class action they're taking against, which is really interesting, almost like a revolution. Wow. Lots to think about there, isn't there?
All right. So are we moving on, guys, from the poll? Has everyone completed it? Okay, fantastic. So I love this bit about being authentic. I can't see the poll. I'm not going to hide that back. I'm glad you were waiting for me to leave there. So, you know, and I thank you all for being really honest about how you're feeling. I think it's interesting. We're all going through this our own way, but I'd love really, Nikki, to sort of focus in on you here, because I know this is really your expertise and you've got some big ideas on this area. So where can leaders really be starting now? How can they start solving for this crazy emotional time we're all going through?
Yeah, it's a great question. The interesting thing about this is actually, do you know what? Leaders need to start with self and then team. And it's almost like, and Rhonda and I were chatting about this, it's almost like the oxygen mask on plane is that, you know, look after self first before you hand the mask to somebody else. It's no different when it comes to leadership. Why? Because we have a contagion impact, all puns intended, people. But we do have a contagion impact. And what's fascinating is if you think about it, we judge ourselves on intent, but others judge us on our behavior, on what they see. So what's really challenging for leaders is you've got all of this stuff going on in your own head about how you're feeling, like how you answered on the poll, but yet as a leader, we've got this bigger, more challenging responsibility of how we support the team. And truthfully, we cannot do that and do it with authenticity and do it right until we've kind of got ourselves in a really good headspace, because they'll see it. They'll see it in your physiological state, whether you're on the end of a Zoom call, whether you're on the end of a phone, whether you're still working face to face. They'll see it, they'll hear it. So first step is, as a leader, is get yourself in check, is think of yourself, pull down that oxygen mask and be consciously aware of, where is my head right now? And think about some self-care and self-management things you can do. Learn to breathe again, learn to smile, think about your environment, keep a note of your wins, keep about, you know, things that make you feel good about self, and make sure that you're in that state before you actually engage with your team. You know, just take a couple of minutes to recalibrate self and go, right, in this moment in time, I am being the very best version I can be of myself. And that's really important, because you know this, right? You know that even as a leader, you've got a leader, and you know what you're expecting from that person. They're all looking to us for a roadmap at the moment. They're looking for us as a leader to fundamentally, you know, provide that direction and to show that we care, to demonstrate trust, to provide that hope and that positivity. And you cannot do that unless you can literally demonstrate in that in yourself. If there's any waver of doubt or frustration and uncertainty, they're going to pick that up from you. That's the contagion impact. And let's not dress this up. This is not easy. It's really not easy. And people challenge me on it. They say, well, Nick, you're telling me to be authentic and genuine. Now, how's that being authentic and genuine? I said, it still is. It's you just accessing a different part of you, a different part of yourself, knowing that that's the self that you have to put in front of your team. Because as a leader, we have that responsibility. And it sucks, but do you know what, as leaders, we don't get a day off. It's a 24/7 job. So take some time out before you put your leadership hat on and go, okay, I've got a really important job here, to get yourself in the right headspace first. Rhonda, anything to sort of add to that?
I think self-care is absolutely the right place to start. It is a totally unique state that we're in. I loved, you know, as we fell into this in March all over the world, and there's people coming out, you just do this, and you go, just what? We've never done this before. No one who's been through this, you know, they would have to be 120 years old. So it's really, it is a unique state. Own that, be a bit gentle with yourself that we haven't got a good path through it, that we're still trying to work that out. But the self-care comes because despite all that ambiguity and craziness, your team's still looking at you and going, are we okay? Are we going to be okay? And there is a role in leadership where you do have to be honest, you have to be self-aware, you have to be open and vulnerable about things when you don't know what the answer is. But equally, you can't be the person that goes, I don't know, can I lean on you? It does need to be very much, you can be a little bit of an island going, we're not exactly sure where the path is going to go, but we're looking for one now. We've got a couple of options. Here's my thoughts. What's yours? And really opening that up so that there is some planning to this as opposed to just throwing our arms up.
Yeah, I think those really, really great points, both of you. And I think, you know, the salient point here is, you're right, as leaders, we're supposed to know all the answers. This is, can I use the word unprecedented again without putting money in the swear jar? This is unprecedented.
You have one unprecedented left.
3 strikes, you're out. But it's
we could run a sweepstake on this.
We could.
I'll see if anyone can get it into the questions at the end. But this is the time, you know, as leaders, we feel like we have to know all the answers, that you know, we've got this. This is the time where it's okay not to know the answers, but you also have to have that element of, I've got this myself. This is where it's okay. Self-care is really, really important to make you feel comfortable not knowing the answers, because you will breathe and nobody knows it.
I think it's also, Ellen, Rhonda, it's absolutely your vulnerability as a leader saying, I don't have the right answers. What we cannot do is offer vagaries or interpretations. If we don't have them, we still communicate that. We communicate that. So I don't have all the right answers, but I'm going to make, you know,
I'll find out and get back to you.
Or, yeah, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, exactly. So as a leader, if we started with that self-care, that taking time out of knowing what do we know, what don't we know, etc. You know, what next? After we've taken that pause of breath, what comes next?
I think what comes next, I think there's two things that we can each do as leaders that are like, we can start them right now. So the first one is know where your team's up to. And I don't mean I've got 5 questions, I ring up everybody and we answer them in tick, 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 and not like that everyone will feel that. But actually reach out to people, find out where they're up to, what's going on, what are they afraid of, what are they excited about, what have they learned, what are they challenged by, and know where they're coming from in a very genuine way, as Nikki's word was caring, and I think that's a great place to start. Because leadership is not about you, it's about the space you make for everybody else, and that's the first way to make space, is to actually invite them in so you can hear what's going on. The second thing is know what they're thinking about next. So when we talk about, at the moment, even the CEO of our biggest companies don't have an answer. Like, people don't know what date it is or when or anything like that. So as a leader further down in the chain, often we're saying, okay, I don't really know the dates on anything. I don't really know the plan, but I should be at least okay and knowing what's going on with people's fears and ideas and what they're thinking about next, because that will give you a baseline to go, okay, people are really excited about not working in an office anymore, or they're very excited about getting back to the office, or whatever it happens to be. And when that happens, I know that that won't be something we have to worry about because they're excited about that, but that one that they're afraid of, we will have to worry about. So the one that's coming through in a very practical, and I'm always the pragmatist, but people are afraid of public transport at the moment. So if you've got a lot of your team that's going to be catching public transport, knowing that they're afraid of that, you can start to have that conversation and think about what that might look like. And if you see the transport organisations are already talking about what that might look like. So you've got ways that you can start to investigate in a very real way how you're going to address people's fears and challenges, the anxiety that's settling in. So I think they're the first things. Ask your team, find out how they're going, and then start to work with what they're saying are their challenges and the things they're excited about. That would be the first 2 things I did.
Do you know what, Rhonda? They're both super important, and I totally agree. And it fascinates me that I feel very privileged. I've had 16 years of working with, you know, leaders. And when we talk about coaching and having that connection with people, which are their #1 resource, and I say, how are you going with connecting with your people? In pre-COVID-19, it was like, oh, I don't have time. This is about making time for that connectivity and knowing that the conversation is the relationship, right? And knowing that you have no business without that resource. And therefore it is about absolutely understanding how you get the most out of them. So back to your point, even something as simple as, you know how we all say, oh, how are you? I'm fine, thanks, how are you? We don't even think about that. We just breeze through it. So I think taking it a step up and building on what Rhonda just says, even when you do talk to them, make those real questions asked with real intent, like you actually want to have a conversation, you're genuinely interested in hearing what they've got to say, and listen, and really listen, and be really present with them as well. So instead of just saying, how are you? You know, maybe it's about, so exactly to you say, share with me, so I'm curious, share with me, what are you finding really easy to deal with and comfortable about this situation? And what do you find challenging? What are you kind of thinking, bring it on? And what are you fearful of? And being much more specific so that you get richer data, you get richer information, you have a better conversation. But, you know, have the conversation and actually think about even how you can use that to create a better environment when you do re-engage, when you do re-onboard, and bring some of those learns into them. And of course, there's something so potent and powerful, exactly as you were saying, Rhonda, of not making this the leader telling you how it's going to be, but let's have a conversation around how we want it to be for us that are all working together. I think that's absolute gold, absolute gold. But I also think it's okay, back to our earlier point, of being a bit vulnerable and sharing your thoughts too. It's an awful lot easier to share a fear with a leader who says, I'm a bit hesitant to do the old train journey that I used to do at the moment, for somebody else in the team to say, yeah, I feel a bit like that too.
I think that question of asking your team what they're doing and making that co-plan sort of piece together is a really important step. And don't forget that because your team's at home, you're still the leader. They're still waiting to see what you've got to say. They still want to connect. They want to know you care. And so as vulnerable as you might feel yourself, sort of getting out there in all this craziness, remember that people do want to hear from you. If you've got good relationships already, and you should have, then that's what matters, and checking in is a big part of that.
Yeah, and one of my favorite phrases, sort of bastardized a little bit from Simon Sinek, is be the leader that you wish to follow, and humanize it. It's not a leader to a team, it's still one human being talking to another human being, so and have that connectivity, and treat people as you would want to be treated, listen to them as you would want to be treated. But I also think it's really important, and I know some of the things that Rhonda and I are talking about are really simple, great, might be simple but not common practice. But if you think about, if you take a step back and stand in the shoes of your team members and see the world from their perspective, exactly to Rhonda's point, right, they're going to be looking for you to focus on the direction. They're going to be looking for absolute clarity on expectations. And another great thing that's really important to do with them at the moment is celebrate the wins that you have with them, even the small ones. And the small ones might be even a bit of fun and a victory of what you've done on Zoom. But and also for all leaders out there, we kind of need to be having a new mantra at the moment, which is that we lead people, priorities, and projects in that order. This is not a time to think about our technical expertise. This is the time where our emotional intelligence steps up, because that is the fundamental magic ingredient in effective leadership, in extraordinary leadership, but it's key at the moment. Wouldn't you agree, Rhonda?
Yeah, I think there's also this element of there are changed expectations by the nature of what we're doing, but we don't really know what they are yet. So, for example, normally what happens is an organization's got a plan and a goal, and we're doing this, and this is how we're getting to it. Here's our milestones, and we're locking it in. All of a sudden, we're going, don't really have a plan that's working quite that well, not really sure what we're going to look like, not really sure when that will be, but if you could lead through it, that'd be great. So organizations are relying not just on their big leaders, but all their leaders to say, if you could keep people connected to whatever it is we might look like, that would be great. And I can't give you many guidelines around that. And I think that to be secure in ambiguity is a really powerful trait right now, to say, however it is, I'm okay with it, and I'm going to do my best and our best during that. And I think that's almost enough for some of those conversations. Yeah, because absolutely. The leaders that are coming out and saying, I know the way forward, everyone's going, sure.
I know the way forward for the next day or so, and I think that's absolutely true as well. And there's going to be lots of things that are going to change, right? We're going to, even our definition of the workday is going to change. Back to your point earlier, and you're sharing the story of your friend that's got the class act, it's how wonderful, by the way, that it's only taken 120 years to have a different definition of workday, no longer 9 to 5. And I have to tell you, I am loving, and I'm talking to lots of leaders, and those of you out there, the shift in mindset from, I need to be able to see you in the office to know that you're doing what I want you to do. And I think that's phenomenal, that this whole situation has actually brought around a different expectation, which is, I don't need to see you to trust in what you're doing. And I think key for that, by the way, is also as leaders, and what we should expect is measure ourselves by our outputs, not by the time it takes us to do something sitting in an office somewhere. So greater trust, I'm sure, will be a greater expectation and a greater output from all that we're experiencing at the moment.
Some really, really great ideas there, guys, as always. And I think you're iterating and really bringing home what we know, because I think we need to hang in on there. And that really brings us to the longer term. So what should leaders be doing, sort of the medium, longer term, looking forward here?
Yeah, I think the first thing I mean, everyone who knows me will know that I do this. The first thing I always want to do is make a plan, and that's not a bad idea. Just be open to the fact that your plan could change. And with so much ambiguity and change and a bit of confusion, what does re-engaging onboarding your team look like? What are the things that they're challenged by? How are you going to address that? What are the things they're excited about? How are you going to bring those new ways of working or new ideas into the place? And how are you going to get those ideas and different approach locked down and into a better way of looking at the future? So I would say first thing, make a plan, albeit it could be a plan you need to change, but that's a good start.
Yes. Yeah.
And as Nikki said, hearing the team's voice in that, making sure that it's co-created, that it's not just, you know, here's my plan, I'm giving it to you, but actually, thank you for all your ideas. Thanks for letting me know what your challenges were. Let's work together to make something really good out of that. The other thing I would say it's really important for leaders to do is to understand that they're not alone. So often when we're working with our team, we might go, okay, my team and I are here doing this, but there'll be other people in exactly the same boat, whether you're the CEO of a small company or whether you're a leader in a giant company. There'll be other leaders doing what you're doing, other CEOs doing what you're doing, reaching out to your peers, understanding how your organization and industry might fit back in, knowing what's possible, looking at all the ideas. I mean, there's starting to come out the examples of the companies that are doing this really well. And I think they're the people that we should be going, what is the new normal? What could it look like? And who can I get ideas from? Because your version of the new normal doesn't have to be the same as everybody else's, but at least we're starting to lock it in.
And on that point, actually, Rhonda, even within your own organisation, what's your new norm, and actually what's norm to you is not going to be the same, because we've got to be cognizant of the fact that it's not a one size fits all, and that when we all come back, we're all going to come back with the same mindset and the same beliefs and the same emotional reaction. Because this, while we've all gone through this, you know, we haven't all experienced it the same. You know, it's been different for people physically, mentally, financially, socially. So I tell you what I love about this when we talk about what's next, the future. What a brilliant opportunity to actually recalibrate as leaders, almost upgrade our leadership, and to actually use the voice of our team to actually plan for that future with the team as well. It is going to be a period of adjustment. And I think we need to be cognizant of leaders when we come back, that there are going to be all those things we touched on earlier, that there might be some people still feeling a sense of loss and guilt. Some may be reluctant to come to work for health reasons, or are still battling this homeschooling and balancing that as well. So I think expecting everyone to step right back into a normal mode of operation isn't realistic. And I think we absolutely need to be cognizant of that to make the best plans for the future. So plan ahead, but plan for unevenness, exactly to Rhonda's point.
Great segue to moving on, guys. Really, you know, this piece about re-engaging, re-onboarding, reintegrating, reconnecting. Let's sort of drive this home with that.
So I think there's an element of this that everyone's talking about, which is all the administrative pieces, like how does JobKeeper admin work and things like that. And there are gazillions of lawyers working that out at the moment for all sorts of companies. But there are a few other things that we can do from a really deeply human perspective. And the first one is to look at your employees as not just an homogenous group that will all be, I just need to get them the logistics of how many square meters they need on what date, but actually how are they going to reconnect and what's important to them. And inside your group, you'll have some people who've got 20 years experience that have been part of your organization for a long time. They'll be ready to come back the way they want to come back. You'll have someone else who literally started work 3 days and was halfway through their onboarding before everything shut down. They went home. They haven't even finished onboarding and now they're not really sure how they're connected. So knowing who's different in your team, and then that element of who's dying to come back, who's not, who's had a total epiphany about the work they want to do in their life and rethought their whole career and doesn't even want to do that job anymore. And so knowing those people and not trying to manage them as a blob, but actually saying, okay, I need to understand the specific elements. I think that is a really important part of re-engaging people, or whichever of the re's that we use, but it's about knowing your team so that you can curate the right experience for the right people and be thoughtful about who you need to reach out, people who might have a little more anxiety than others, etc., that you can really start to think about more than just the logistics of numbers of square meters.
Yeah, really good call. Rhonda, just to sum that up, because you've articulated it so beautifully, is never I believe, has the conversation between a leader and the individual members of their team ever been more important? And what a great opportunity to do that. And if you have to sit there with a sheet with all the names of your team on there and work through it and think, okay, what have I learned from this conversation? Because what you don't want to do is do it so that it becomes this quagmire of thoughts, to your point, and a mush of this one size fits all. Don't be afraid to have a little bit of process and planning and actually how you have those conversations, and take some notes to think about how they're feeling versus another person. So really good call.
Thanks both. We're going to start having some questions come through. So perhaps while I have a look at what's coming through, you could give us a bit of a summary of, everything we've talked about, so that people can, make the notes as they're busy scribbling. And I'm going to, if you want to start putting your questions through as Rhonda and Nikki start their summation, that would be great.
In summation, never has your role as a leader been more important, and never has the conversation between one human being and another human being going to reveal more than it's going to reveal for you at the moment. I think what's really important, and Rhonda touched on this, is we can think about logistics and processes and health and safety and the environment when we go back to work. But just remember that emotions are another form of data, and will tell you, and it's almost about doing the analysis of that data as well. And so just know how people are feeling, and don't try out our telepathy. Actually do ask them. Don't tell them that you know how they're feeling. Actually ask them. And ultimately, from all of this, there's an opportunity to come back much better. And I think we should all be measuring our impact as a leader on, if you need it to be stats, great, but better employee engagement, better productivity. And you know what? I think there's no higher accolade for a leader at the moment that you have a team that re-engage, that re-onboard, and that they come back and they work for you because they want to, not because they have to, not because you're paying them to, but actually that in terms of how you have handled this makes them want to work for you. I'm not suggesting they all do it for free, by the way.
I think some of these questions coming through are just adorable. So I'd love to get to them. I think that if I could just add very briefly to Nikki's summary, because it's so good, is just know your context, be really honest, both your industry and your organizational context, but also the personal stuff, which Nikki just went through so beautifully. Be really honest with people, understand that people are in a huge amount of pain and other people are winning. And that divide is so difficult for us to deal with, because we do come together as a community. So your role as a leader is to try and bridge both those sides of the equation. It's very difficult, but you're not alone, that there's a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations that will be doing it. So that's our thoughts, albeit very briefly, but yeah, it's something we're working a lot on at the moment. The first question is, loving the Mario cap. I am tempted to put it on.
That's a question.
That's a trivialized topic.
Exactly, but there is a great question from Bridget, and I don't know if we have enough time for that, and maybe, Bridget, this is something we do as a post or a follow-up, but she has asked actually more practical tips, please, which I think is a great question, and that's the crystal ball bit, right?
Yes. Well, actually, maybe we can summarize some of the stuff that we discussed today into a tip sheet, Rhonda, and for anybody that's on the call, we can.
I think that would be fantastic, because we're doing a lot of thinking on that, a lot of work on that, and a lot of client work on that. And to give people some practical things that they can do as a leader would be fantastic. So very happy to do that. It's a great question. We don't want it to be too theoretical.
No, exactly.
And
there's a really great question. Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
Great question here that I love. There's a great question here that I love, which is, what things do you think should be left behind in the pre-COVID-19 world? We've kind of touched on it, but I think this will be really helpful for leaders as they start formulating the way forward. I think we possibly know the answer, but let's take a moment on that one.
We designed this 8-hour working day, 5-day working week in the Geneva Workingmen's Convention in 1860. It was probably a pretty stupid idea then, it still is, we should stop it. So hopefully they will leave that behind, and it means that people with disability that have had a really hard time coming to a workplace can now be included, because we've just shown that you can work from anywhere. And hopefully people with a bit of anxiety where every day in the office is not where they need to be, they can have a day when they don't come in except for a couple of Zoom calls. So I think things like that harsh restriction of this is the only way we work, is already gone, and I don't think it will come back.
Yep, and also leave behind that lack of trust. If I can't see you and I can't see what you're doing,
oh
that's
my
going to be
God, yes,
awesome.
1,000 times.
And I'm so excited because I'm aware of some industries that this is quite prevalent in, and I'm so, dare I say, excited that COVID-19 has actually forced a little bit of shake-up on some of those mindsets. So it's great to know that there will be some good things, there will be some things that we can leave behind in the right way.
Another really good question, we've got a few minutes left, is this the end of open plan offices? I think this is a quick yes or no one here.
I worked in the Netherlands in 2000, 2003 when open plan offices were designed. It was a beautiful idea, and it's collaborative, and it's about sharing space. The way that we've implemented activity-based working in open plan offices in Australia, which is a real estate sort of play about getting more people in a smaller space, is a really ugly way of working, and not many people do good work in that space anyway. So the answer is at the end of open plan offices. I hope so.
And adding on to that,
great.
But adding on to that, Rhonda, I hope we take it and learn from it. I was also, because agile working was such a big topic pre all of this as well, that actually we are consciously aware that maybe we could create an environment as welcoming and as productive in the office, in the working environment, as we have had to do in our own homes during all of this as well.
Well, also, surely if more of us are working from home, there's less need for an agile work environment.
Well, interesting, I have two clients that pre-COVID-19 were actually looking to move offices to find bigger spaces. And needless to say, those plans have been shelved and one's been put on hold, because what's been awesome is they realize that we can make this work and we don't need to do this. As long as they're saying that when I'm in that environment, it is a sense of belonging, it is a productive environment, back to Rhonda's point as well.
Okay, so I'm going for, oh, sorry, I'm going to go for two more questions, Rhonda. I'm just looking at our time. I've got one question. I'm going to actually start on a negative question because I think it's very important and pretty pertinent to CareerSwitch. And then I'm going to end on a positive, as it befits us. So, and look, this is the sad reality. I, as many of you know, my partner is Qantas, so this is sort of, very real for me as well. So, on the question is, before we bring people back together in the office, we'll need to make some of them redundant. I think this is the elephant in the room right now, right? And there's a question about how do we achieve the downsizing while ensuring the remaining people stay whole and committed to the business? And I think that is a big question as we step forward.
Yeah, I'll start with that because, a lifetime working in HR and people and culture, this is part of the reality, is the most important thing when you're dealing with someone's employment is to be as honest as you possibly can. You have to look them in the eye and know that they are an adult who has a life as complicated and as important as your own, and they need everything and all the information they can possibly get so they can make good choices. So giving people the honest truth, knowing what's going on, and then supporting them with the decisions they need to make for themselves and their families and friends and family is really important. And so don't hold it back, don't wait, give it to them as early as you possibly can. If you've got 1 minute, 1 day, 1 month of notice, give it to them because they need it and you don't. And so being really honest and really forthright as fast as you can is a very, very important part of that.
So as I said, I'm going to end on a positive, and this is I'm going to call out Jacob. Thank you very much, Jacob. Said not a question, but the three of you should have your own talk show. Great vibes, very informative. And we started on a positive, so I thought we should end on a positive.
Yeah, Jacob, if you're going to come to our talk show, we're in. I don't think it would take much to convince any one of us.
We'd have to have a whole teapot to get it through.
So lovely. Lovely for someone to make that comment.
Thank you,
Jacob. That
How
was
lovely. That's why I wanted to pull it out. Thank you, Jacob. Listen, Rhonda and Nikki, as always, it's, even through the bad times, we can see the positive, and I guess, that's about the human element. And as always, I love talking about this with you guys. Thank you all for joining us. We really welcome it, especially when we know there's so much going on. Both Rhonda and Nikki, if you want to contact them, please do. Please contact us. I love the fact Rhonda and Nikki talked about, let's put a fact sheet, a bit of a practical tip sheet out. I think that would be really valuable for people. But just remember, the key thing to remember here is we are absolutely all in this together. No question is too stupid, too wild. Remember the self-care piece, and not the the self-care help books, but the self-care to make sure you're in a strong enough position. I love Nikki's analogy of putting on the oxygen mask before you put on other people. For me, that's definitely what I'm going to take out from this. So thank you all for the time. We have recorded this. We'll send it out if you want to send it to your teams or share. Absolutely, we know not everybody can make this time. So Rhonda and Nikki, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for sparing this time to help sort of leaders as they make their way through these muddy waters.
It's been lovely to be with both of you. Thank you.
A great reason and a great opportunity for us to chat.
And there'll be many more conversations about this topic in the next couple of months. And I think we've all got to just keep learning from each other and being super open to people who are doing it well. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely engage and talk to us. And I think we all just want to help and make it easier, make it better, make it more productive as we go forward. Oh, I'm loving that.
Oh, yes. You just made my day, Rhonda.
Great close.
And remember to laugh, because there's always something funny.
Got to laugh.
All right.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for making it happen. Bye.